I'm Hannah.
And I'm Charlotte.
And welcome to the Purple Sector.
So today we are joined by Saki from the Racing House.
So Racing House, we do F1 fan content. So we get people on live streams. We also do explainers. It's just about getting as much involvement and engagement from fans as possible. Just having a relaxed time, really nothing too serious or too scripted, but we just try and get fans involved as much as possible. That's it.
We'll put all the links in the description below as always, so make sure you go and follow everything and subscribe. So yeah, Hannah, do you want to start us off?
I hate to say it, but this is to Charlotte. I told you so. Daniel, so at the end of last week's review, we did predictions, and I decided to be a bit out there, according to Charlotte and Elliot, and say that Daniel Ricciardo was going to get a podium. And this weekend, I proved to be right. He had an incredible qualifying session, 5th on the grid. I was surprised that Pierre Gasly outqualified him, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting the Renaults to be as racy as they were, considering Ocon qualified in 12th. And then this race is, I've got to take, if I had a hat on, I would take it off to the team of the strategists at Renault, because it was just brilliant, the fact that Perez decided to pit under the late safety car and take that chance on fresher tyres, but they decided, no, we'll keep Dan out. He'd had a strong race, managed his tyres well, especially because they were quite a bit older than some of those around him. And then to hold his nerve on the restart, get on the podium again, I was just very proud. And it's Renault are now looking like there's a very close battle between them, Racing Point and McLaren for third in the constructors. But also, are Renault going to look this racy next year? Now Dan's gone to McLaren, I think.
Well, I predicted that Gasly would be on the podium, so that's a bit sad for me, but I didn't think your prediction would come true. But I'm really happy for Dan. He had a very good weekend, and yeah, like that midfield battle between all them teams are so close. I know Renault are leading by 1 point now, and Racing Point and McLaren are on the same point. So like that's where the battle is this year, not out front, it's in the midfield.
Yeah, I think for me that was a bit of a surprise seeing Daniel Ricciardo up there and Renault just rolling the dice to keep him out. It was super impressive. I think this race was a massive opportunity for a lot of the teams, and for one reason or other, some of them, they didn't have the luck on their side, but others, they called it just right, whereas some of the drivers just couldn't handle the pressure. So Daniel Ricciardo did what he had to do when the time came through it.
Yeah, the later part of the race was very good. Do you want to talk about your point now?
Yeah, so the driver I'm going to talk about is George Russell, which leads quite nicely onto what I was talking about just now, about those teams and drivers that couldn't really step it up at the right time. Like for me, this race was a massive opportunity for teams and drivers to score points and potentially get a podium where they wouldn't necessarily be tipped to get it. And for me, George, he does everything so right. That's what really grates me. He does everything perfectly in qualifying. During the race, he does all he can, even though the car isn't quite there most of the time. But today, he was there. He got into 10th place, and then I just saw the car on the side. I was like, "What? Please tell me that's Latifi." This season and next season is an opportunity for him to show what he's capable of, and he's been doing a decent job in qualifying. When it comes to the race, something always happens where he just doesn't quite convert. And if you look at the record between him and his teammate, Latifi on paper is doing better than him. But if in reality, George is by far the better driver. But if you look at their head-to-head record, the record doesn't show that, which is really disappointing. Like I want to see him do the things that the previous greats have done, i.e. put a car in a good position for qualifying and then convert it during the race. And it seems to be a recurring pattern with him, which is the disappointing thing, because he was there behind the safety car trying to get his tyres warmed up. But I don't know if it was the wrong position to be doing it, given the limited space. I imagine he's a risk taker, and he puts the car in a position, takes the risks where required, but I feel like his judgment calls just aren't quite there.
Yeah, when I saw yellow, because we was already under the safety car, wasn't we? Yeah. And then they just panned to that, and there was like the car, and then like the speed boards or like whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, please don't be George. And then I just saw it was George, and I was like, the one time that he's actually fully in the points, that if he finished, he would have got a point. And it's just really disappointing. And then to see him sitting on the side of the track, just like beating himself up, I was just like, that is the worst moment. I think that was worse than seeing the car on the side. It was him sitting there on the grass, telling the marshals, go away from me. That was the worst moment for me. I was just really, really upset.
Big time, because he was sat in the cockpit for quite a while, which I thought was quite unusual. I was like, is he okay? Because he wasn't moving. And then I heard the radio where he was just he was silent for a little bit and then said something, and then they cut away to him just sat there, and you could tell his visor was all steamed up, so he was pretty much just there crying. I can imagine he just needs to pick himself up from the ground and keep going with it, because he's doing all the right things. He's doing it, but it's just not quite working out for him.
See, for me, qualifying, I can't fault George. He's missed a Saturday. He gets into Q2, but in the races, it's time and time again, really well in managing the car when he's nowhere near the points. Gets near the points, and either something goes wrong or he bottles it. And for me, it's created an interesting, I think it was a couple of race weekends ago, I compared it to the fact that Lando, Alex, all three of them had their rookie seasons at the same time. But for me, this is more George's rookie season than anything, because in a backmarker Williams, nowhere near the fight in last season, there's only so much you can do. Whereas now he's actually having to fight up against cars. He's actually having to able to manage the psychological pressure of, someone's behind you is going to try and jump you on the restart. And that situation was just so unfortunate, because they think it's the bit in Imola where there's a slight bump in the road, in the track, which might have caught him out. But for me, it's a frustrating one, because he's going to, at this rate, he's going to get the record for the most amount of races without a point to finish. And it's annoying because he's such a talented driver, but it does, for me, as much as I'd love to see him in the Mercedes, does maybe point to Mercedes' judgment in that he isn't ready yet. There's still so many things drivers need to learn. And if you look, for example, Pierre Gasly not only having one and a bit of a season before he got into the Red Bull, same with Alex Albon, and look what happened to them, is maybe Mercedes are being wise not to promote him just yet. And the fact that Latifi nearly got a point before him, and on paper, as you said, Latifi is ahead of him, but that never tells the full story. Is if George and Latifi were racing against each other, George would win 9 times out of 10, save for something going wrong. Latifi can't outrace him. But I think at this rate, Latifi will be the one that gets the points, because he just seems to be in the right place at the right time.
I also think it's pressure, because he obviously knew that he was going to be on for points. So he obviously wanted to make sure that on the restart he was good to go, but he just didn't do it in the right way. I think that's the worst sort of thing. But yeah, I think what you said, Hannah, is I also agree. You obviously know I want George in that Mercedes more than anything, but also I don't want him to go in there and end up like Pierre. Yeah, I think they've done a good thing keeping him in that Williams for next year, and then to see what he's like going forward.
So now moving on to Charlotte. Who've you got to cover this weekend?
So I'm going to talk about AlphaTauri, because I think I just didn't want to just choose Pierre, and I didn't just want to choose Kvyat either, because Pierre had a great Saturday, great qualifying in P4. I was very surprised. In the last review, I said I thought he was going to do well this weekend, and when I saw him in P4, I thought, yes, he's going to. What Hannah said, I told you so. I thought I was going to get that moment. Obviously not. Obviously, I think it was a power unit issue in the race. Before the race, we obviously knew that there was something going on because they were checking his car. But I mean, he was running well. He was running in P5 before they had to retire. So if he carried on, I would think that he would be fighting for that podium, especially after Mac went out. So I think he would definitely be fighting up there with Danny Rick for that podium. And then I just want to think how good Kvyat was in the race. He had a really good race. P4, I think he had a really good race. And I saw an interview saying that Helmet saying that he's not keeping his seat, or that's not a reason for him to stay in the seat or whatever. To me, he proved that he is still a good driver. So yeah, don't really know what you think, but I think AlphaTauri this weekend had a pretty solid weekend, even with Pierre going out.
AlphaTauri have been a bit of a dark horse in terms of how consistent they've been this season. For me, I feel like they've been more consistent than the actual Red Bull team in terms of the performance that they're managing to bring out, especially in the second half of this season. And like, if you look at what they're doing with the resource that they actually have, they're like, especially Gasly, contender for a driver of the season, which I think is super impressive. Like, what could they do? I know Christian Horner joked about using the AlphaTauri as the Red Bull B team and just copy and pasting the spec that they have on a Red Bull for AlphaTauri. But imagine what they could do if they had more resource there, because they've rebranded and they've got this new energy about them.
I feel like AlphaTauri are one of them teams that flies under the radar a lot of the time. In kind of the past season or two, with Pierre in that car, it's been going from strength to strength. I think that is partially due to the fact of Pierre. I feel like there's something about him that feels really comfortable in that team, and it's helped to build up and gain confidence in the car. And his qualifying session on Saturday, I can't fault it. To be honest, it took me by surprise. I know the lad's fast. And then the race, the fact that I think it was something to do with a cooling issue on the engine, and I was gutted because I feel like if Pierre had got to the end of the race, I reckon he would have been on the podium. Personally, I think he might have pipped Dan for it because the AlphaTauris were just looking that racy. Daniel, I made the joke, he torpedoed his way to fourth. It was one of the moments where everyone looked at this timing list and went, is that Kvyat in fourth? And I think all of us were kind of taken by surprise, but he had a really strong race, and I get where Helmut Marko was coming from in terms of the racing. Kvyat's had, I've lost count of how long, he was in Toro Rosso and then he got promoted to Red Bull because Seb left, and then got demoted back down, and he's not, for me, showing what he needs to justify the seat. AlphaTauri is one of them teams where I think you get 2-3 seasons maximum and you're out, because the whole purpose isn't there to race in its own right, it's there to build up drivers for Red Bull. However much you disagree with that, that is the fact of the situation, is they're not the same, it's not the same relationship as, say, Alfa Romeo has with Ferrari, where Alfa Romeo is its fully fledged team. AlphaTauri's sole existence is for Red Bull. And he's not shown for me the talent he needs to get back in Red Bull. He's been thoroughly outpaced by Gasly all year. However, I do think it does show that he does have the moments where he deserves to stay in F1. And if there were 22 seats on the grid, I would say he probably would get one. I'd have taken Kvyat over drivers like Giovinazzi, I'd have taken him over Latifi, but there's other things you consider with them, so all's be it. But like I did Tsunoda get promoted, but in the end is AlphaTauri, if you're going to take one of the two experienced drivers, you take Gasly over Kvyat every time. And ultimately, because of the difficulties they've had with that Red Bull have had with Gasly, Kvyat, Albon not matching Max, they're going to have to take a younger driver now in that second AlphaTauri to secure their future, because it only takes Max Verstappen signing one contract with Mercedes. But if Lewis leaves and Max went to Mercedes, Red Bull would be absolutely screwed.
I was just going to ask you a question, like, do you think that AlphaTauri are showing up Red Bull? For me, it's a tad embarrassing for Red Bull, because they've got these supposed two top drivers. Max is doing what he needs to do, but AlphaTauri are pretty much showing up the kind of imbalance and lack of strength within that team. Because fair enough, they're able to put Max in the right position, but the fact that they're unable to get Albon, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the car.
The fact that both Pierre and Alex cannot get close to Max, but we've seen how both Pierre and Alex can drive in an AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso back then. I think it just shows that car is Max's car and not for the second driver. And I agree that AlphaTauri are kind of showing up Red Bull because they do seem to have that balance, and they also seem to work really well together, whereas Red Bull to me is just toxic. So
AlphaTauri's success is humiliating for Red Bull, and it does massively show them up in the sense that you've got your B team, or used to be junior team, they now call it the sister team or whatever, showing you up on a week by week basis. And it's not just that they do well, like Gasly qualifies well and out-qualifies one of the Red Bull cars, but they maximise everything out of the car in pretty much any condition at any track. And also, I think they make brilliant strategy calls. They manage things with a lot less assets and money towards them than Red Bull gets. And Red Bull gets all this attention and publicity. But who are we talking about most of the time? Who's probably going to get Driver of the Year? Gasly is. It's not going to be Max. And Red Bull, it's a poison chalice in the end. It's same as Ferrari is, to be honest, in that Red Bull create this toxic atmosphere. They did it when Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber there. They did it with Dan and Max, and they now do it long term. I don't see Red Bull maybe continuing, because if they don't win a championship soon, I don't see them keeping and funding the team if they're not getting up there and winning races. When the regulation changes come in, that'll be the turning point. If within 2-3 seasons Red Bull aren't winning races consistently, will Red Bull leave? And to be honest, I wouldn't count it out, because why would you stay in a series where you're not top dog, where you're basically being bested at every opportunity and now being bested by your junior team?
I don't see Max staying at Red Bull long term. And when you talk about their driver kind of management and driver lineup, it's clear that they go with an old school. There's a clear number one driver and there's a number two driver, which I think is fine when you're winning, which Red Bull were doing for a long time. But when you're not winning, it just shows up that lack of, or that deficiency within the management. And at the moment, Red Bull, for me, are in a very dangerous territory where they don't have an engine supplier. If they were to take on Honda's IP, that's going to require a lot of money, a lot of investment. And is their owner going to do that on top of the new rules coming in?
Someone pointed out the irony was that Red Bull are currently on 226 constructors' points. Lewis Hamilton's on, I think, is he 256 now? Lewis is single-handedly beating Red Bull. And I think that shows them up more than anything. But obviously now with Imola done and dusted, we head off to Turkey for the next race weekend. So I want to know your predictions. Who do you think is going to get pole position and who do you think is going to end up on the podium?
So I'm going to say Lewis pole, Bottas second. I might just throw a random one in because I don't want to be boring. Carlos in P3. Don't know why. Just going to put him in there. And then for the race, Lewis, Max, Valtteri.
All right, I'm going to be very boring as well in terms of qualifying. I'll put Bottas P1, Lewis P2, and then Max in P3. And then for the race, I'll roll a dice, be a bit wild. I'll say Max takes the victory, Lewis second. Should I put in third? Bottas. Got it. That's as wild as it can get. I don't see anyone else kind of coming to take the usual suspects away from their positions, unfortunately.
For qualifying, it's going to be Lewis, Valtteri, Max. I feel like that's just the way it is at the moment. But in the race, I think Lewis will win. He's a god. He is literally god at the moment on that track, and I feel like he'll want to. So I think Valtteri has to outscore him by 8 points to keep his championship hopes alive. But I feel like Lewis will be the nail in his coffin this weekend. Lewis will take the victory. I'm going to go Max second, and I'm going to go Pierre Gasly in third. That AlphaTauri just looks so racy, and I feel like he'll want to come back. Like, he will be confident in terms of his performance this weekend, but I'll be gutted that he wasn't able to finish the race. So I feel like he'll have a point to prove.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. I've actually really enjoyed this chat. Like I said before, all links will be below.
That's all for me. It's been a pleasure having you on, and we'll see you guys
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.